teachers and teacher trainers, we all have our own pedagogical or andragogical principles or thinking. How to teach and learn so that the learning is effective. How would you describe your principles?
I remember having learning sessions in teacher training college on theories, principles, and I don't remember any of them, but I remember experiences. But they were there in the background. If something instinctively hit me, I would remember it, like a squirrel collects a nut. But when I went into primary school, I began to realize that because of the Plowden report, which I mentioned earlier, this report that was looking at the state of primary schools in England, criticizing them, saying that they were not learner-centered. In the Plowden report, there was a big mention of a educationist called John Dewey from America. And his idea was that society should be in the classroom, that children should be taught through their own early life experiences. And that came up also when I was teaching English to professionals. What do you know already? What language have you picked up? What fears, what expectations have you got? So I couldn't do it in front of the classroom, I realized. So very early on, I started to put them in groups. And I had the skill to actually listen to different people at the same time. And I watched them, and I began to observe those who didn't say anything, those who said a lot, those who were always putting their hands up, those who were not putting their hands up. And I thought, how can I engage everybody? What is it that stops them from putting their hand up? Is it fear? Is it not knowing the answer to my question? Is my question wrong? Should my question be crafted through them? And this long process went on, and I started to find out a method of communicating with the students. And also in Finland, I listened to their English language when they're talking to me, and I would give back their language, because I said, okay, he's using that word, he knows that word. If I used a word or a phrase they didn't know, I'd scrap it for the moment and give a simpler one that they could use. But I would write it down and I would give it to them at the end. And because I put them in groups, and because I'd done a needs analysis, my approach was very task-based, which may have been a project or an outcome, an objective where the outcome would be based on the need of the student to take an exam. Because we always had exams, and those exams in England, for example, were not our exams. They were the exams set by the school or by the government. It was very controlling there, and it still is. In Finland, I think there was a freedom of more continuous assessment. So my approach, I don't have a phrase for my approach. I used methods and approaches, and they didn't work. I said, okay, they don't work here. I tried something else. They worked. Okay, this is evidence that this approach works with this particular group. I can see that they're enjoying themselves. They're illuminated. I will continue in this way. I didn't always know what academic word or phrase I would use for it. I just had an instinct. It was working. and they were learning and they were reaching their outcome. And then with another group, it didn't work. So when I took the Open University course, I learned about orientation, a student's orientation to learning. And I realized that there's intrinsic and extrinsic orientations. For example, a Finnish, mainly man, would come to a course to get a certificate to use for his promotion, because very often a certificate in English at a certain level, you had the chance to be promoted to another level. The same happened with some women who were in the telephone center in Nokia company. We gave them tests, and if they reached a certain level, they could wear a flag, an English flag, to say, I can use English. So they got a little extra money per month. The same in the store Stockman. They had the same. So it was evidence that worked. You'd say it worked with that group, but not with the other group. You tried something else because their orientation was more, they wanted to learn theory, they're more interested in grammar. The others didn't want grammar at all. They just wanted to communicate because they had to go out in the world. They were not worried about making mistakes. This group didn't want to make a mistake. They wanted to know the right use of and the. So you had that approach, but then you know that because the company didn't want that, you had to wean them, like a mother weans the baby from milk to solid food. You had to wean them off. And with the other group who just wanted free discussion, but they had to write a letter, you had to wean them off the free discussion so that they could do some writing and get the grammar right. So it was very instinctive. It was very learner-centered. It was observation. It was seeing what worked, what didn't work, and then applying it, and then progressing towards the goals and the outcomes needed. So that's very abstract, and I still don't have a word for it. I mean, eclectic is maybe, experiential is another. The one thing that I found frustrating with this was the interference of people who were only thinking one way. It could be the manager, like you mentioned earlier, that there are certain people who want to disagree and argue with what you are doing and the way you are doing it. It happened in the classroom, and it happened also with the managers of those particular companies, or even the headmaster of the school. So you had to find champions within that environment, someone who was important enough to say, this is working for us. So when I was teaching researchers in Rautaruukki, they were the researchers, they were studying qualities of steel in the environment. One of them was the manager, and he was powerful, and what they wanted was a little bit different from what the company wanted. But we discussed it, and the manager said, yes, this works. We had a very successful course. And when the human resource manager said, you didn't quite do what I said, the manager went and said, this is exactly what we want. It was very, very successful. So he was my champion. Like the director in Hump was my champion when I got the job in Hump. The lesson I've learned when interacting with people is don't push against a wall if it's too hard. There has to be a very gentle process in learning. The Christian Bible in Matthew, it says, don't give dogs what is sacred, and don't throw pearls to pigs, because they'll turn round and bite you or trample on you. And that is exactly what, if you are selling what is holy to you as a teacher, if you're giving it to the wrong person, you get hit back, and your motivation and your feeling and professionalism is killed. So you need to find out who to talk to, who to teach, in what way, and when is the right time to do it. And that's the big lesson I've learned. Learning to be a priest and reading the Bible was that one phrase. Don't give sacred things to dogs and don't give pearls to pigs. And I've made so many mistakes. My burnout situations have been exactly that, trying to get something with someone who did not understand the situation. And we were left alone and fighting and drowning. But then we found the right person later. So it's knowing how to work with someone and who to work with.
Would you say that don't take the students' motivation for granted? Find it.
Exactly.
You have to find where it lies.
Yes.
And then nurture. You have to know the level.
Yes.
And capacity.
There is in HUMC, they have a test to enter HUMC. It used to be through FinNIPS. It's another system now. They had to write the test, and then they had to write a letter of motivation. Why do you want to study in HUMC? Why do you want to study this? And I had a chance to mark the tests because I was checking their English and read the letters. And they were beautiful and powerful letters. That the motivation came from their grandparents, from their parents, from a desire to do something in the future. Those letters were never, ever read by the teachers. And the teachers never asked the questions, why are you here? And I know that because I actually was asked to visit all the teachers who were teaching in English and evaluate their English. Like I was evaluating online courses in England for one organization who wanted to go online. I evaluated their courses. Were they pedagogically sound? And then I was moderating Open University master's courses. I was moderating the students and the lecturers to see if things were working well. If someone was dropping out, why were they dropping out? So I would talk to the student, why are you dropping out? They would give me the reasons why, and I would discuss with them, and they would come back in. And that's why I got an award for retention of students and developing diversity, because teachers are good, but they don't always have that, in England, trust of conversation with the students. And many students don't want to say to the teacher, I don't like this, because it's the teacher who's going to mark the papers. They would rather go somewhere else. So the Open University created this moderator looking over. And whether the teachers liked it or not, I never really found out. But the Open University's view was let the lecturers know there is a moderator, why the moderator is there. And if you sign the contract with us, you accept this structure. And with Trinity College, where I was moderating or inspecting online course proposals, these were universities like Hallam University in Sheffield. They wanted to shift the teaching degree, which was teaching an English degree, master's degree, from the classroom to online so that they could broaden the market to bring in money from abroad. In order to get a license to do that, they had to propose their curriculum to Trinity College, who adjudicated, and I would be a part of writing a report on the online part, the pedagogy, and how it fitted into the face-to-face courses. And I would either accept, reject, or give further proposals to develop. And the They had to accept that system if they wanted the license.
They say that in England, teachers and inspectors are on the opposite side.
Yes.
And teachers are afraid or even hate the inspectors.
Well, there is research at the moment in England that many teachers do not like interference from the county council or from government in the way they're teaching in the classroom and the number of exams. Because if you have exams at the end, there's this trickle-down effect that you have to teach for the exam. Okay. And teachers in England are excellent. Teacher training is excellent. But compared to Finland, the word autonomy does not really exist in England. And inspectors have come in to my teaching quite a few times in England, and you get used to it. So, for example, if you were my inspector, because I know you, I know that you would be an inspector mentor. You would give me feedback and help me. But there were some inspectors who were more like dictators, and they were feared, and they were known. So when the headmaster said, by the way, there's an inspector coming, do you want the good news or bad news? Say, okay, give us the bad news. Well, the inspector's coming tomorrow, and the good news, it's this inspector. Oh, great, you know, he'll help us. Yeah, and or it could be the other way around. But you get used to it. And I know in Finland there was a questionnaire going around, which is very interesting. And I wonder if any of your listeners or viewers from other countries would have the same response. That the teachers in Finland said if there was an inspector culture in Finland, they would quit their jobs. I don't know if you've heard this. It was said quite a few years ago, and I'm just wondering, in Brazil or Kazakhstan or in Kenya, are they used to the inspectors coming in, or do they have the autonomy? How do they see inspectors? And you know, it could be a totally different video you could make on autonomy and the outside control and what effect it has on teaching and learning, because it's a massive difference.